Hey there. Okay, so this is my second career profile of the semester. This time I decided to go ahead and find a job that would require a little more education. So the sample job that I chose was marriage and family therapist. The example organization that I found was a place called Centerpoint Counseling in Rexburg, Idaho. And the career contact was Brandon Bueller. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist at that center. So in terms of the working environment, it's generally a smaller organization of just a few therapists, or you're on your own in a different setting, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later in the video. A typical workday ranges from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. However, there are times when you get emergency calls or you have to be on call for certain people, in which time that's obviously after hours. There is flexibility in some cases. So if you are in a practice by yourself or with a few other therapists, there tends to be more flexibility than if you're working for, say, for the state or for an agency, because you can choose when you want to work or your hours and that kind of thing with your own practice. So just to be thinking about that. But there is quite a bit of personal independence. Just because it's just you and your patients, generally there's not a lot of people involved other than that. Maybe a secretary or a billing department that helps take payments, but otherwise you're pretty much on your own. And generally, like, the work week is just Monday through Friday. Some places do have Saturdays open or Sundays, but that's very, very rare. So a typical stressor for this particular job, you're dealing with other people's stress and problems, so I can imagine that would be difficult to not take that home with you, so that would be something that I think I would probably really have to work on. You also have to find the right method to help clients. Every client and patient is going to be different, so knowing how to help them and what skills to give them may be stressful. Off hours and emergency calls, those are definitely stressful because it's outside of your work time, and you kind of have to leave whatever you're doing, whether that's with your family or maybe you're just having some downtime, and answer those calls. You also have deadlines in some cases, and you do have to relicense to keep your license up, and then you also have to do continuing education classes every single year. So those things can be stressful if you're not like planning ahead and that kind of thing. Okay, typical benefits. So pretty much the standard. So you get medical, dental, vision, a 401k, life insurance options, and then you can have paid vacation time depending on where you're working. And again, I think another benefit to this job is being able to have your own space to work in, your own practice, and then working when you want to work, which I obviously love. Common job tasks. So generally you're listening to patients who have issues or problems that are maybe of complex nature, and then you are taking those conversations that they have with you, and you're teaching them skills that they need to be able to learn and cope with what they're having problems with, and then you help them to be able to apply those coping skills in their lives outside of the session, and then usually you're meeting on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis and checking in and furthering the conversation and furthering the skills. Educational requirements. So for this particular job, you need a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. However, if you want an edge to be able to get a particular job that's maybe not your own practice, they recommend that you either have a master's degree in psychology, sociology, or counseling, or that you go on a little further and get a doctorate degree if you want that edge to make yourself stand out in terms of competition for jobs. So that was what I read was recommended. However, most jobs are fine with a bachelor's degree and a master's degree of relevancy. So in terms of salary, it kind of just depends on the state. So some states are lower on the spectrum of income for like a starting range, and some are a little bit higher. So the range that I found overall was probably between 43,000 and 50,000 starting, and then an experienced salary range would look about 48,000 to 60,000. Although there were some areas that had jobs in the 70 to $79,000 range. So it sort of just depends on the area. I thought it was kind of interesting. I'm a Washingtonian, and Seattle was actually paid less than the Tacoma area. For therapists. So I thought that was just really fascinating. Tacoma is actually a little bit smaller than Seattle, and it's not a big like metro area. So I think that was kind of interesting. Just food for thought. Miscellaneous career information. You really do have to be good with people. That's your whole job, is to help them and to let them know that you care. So if you're really stinky with people, this is probably not the job for you. You also need to be really good at being confidential. Everything that is said in these sessions is confidential, and you, by law, have to have a confidentiality clause. So you can't share things, even with your spouse, about what's going on at the workplace, because that's a breach of confidentiality. So that is really important. You need to be able to, we don't have to, but there is a variety of ways that you can work as a marriage and family therapist. There's a variety of settings in which you can do so. So you can work in mental health centers, social service agencies, schools, prisons, private or group practices, and then sometimes marriage and family therapists will work in a rehabilitation aspect with rehabilitative counselors. So it's just something I thought was interesting. And then this is a really high growth field, so these therapists are always needed. There's always going to be families that are struggling and that will need help. There's the marriage and family therapists do usually work really closely with social workers and that kind of thing in that type of field that they're applying their degree to. And then again, like I said, the edge in your job area, so a master's in psychology, sociology, or counseling, or having a doctorate degree will always give you a 1-up. So I'm really excited. This was a really fun presentation to work on, and that's just a little bit about marriage and family therapy. I hope you enjoyed.